to our conversation, our radical conversation between Rabbi Levi Cunin, who is our practicing Jew, and Michael E. Gerber, who is our wandering Jew. And our intent and our wish and our hope is that every single one of you who join us, hopefully every single day, will discover something that we're discovering as we continue this conversation. And understand it's a live conversation. We haven't planned this out every single day and exactly how it's going to work. We have absolutely no idea how it's going to work other than the fact of what we intend to do with it. Our intent is to bring the wandering Jew and the practicing Jew together. Our intent is to bring every single one of you who may not be Jews, who may be Christians, who may be Muslims, who may be atheists, all of you who may be secular, in such a way to truly understand that behind everything in this universe is a creator. We call Hashem. We call God. We call the very beginning of it all. And essentially, as a wandering Jew and a practicing Jew, we each of us believe that. There are those of you who don't. There are those of you who put it into question. And that's absolutely spectacular for our purpose being here today and for every single meeting and conversation that Rabbi Cunin and Michael E. Gerber have. So, Rabbi Cunin, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's lovely to be here. So I want you to go back and continue where you left off. And everybody who's been through and watched our last meetings will remember, as you began to tell the story of how you were brought into the world and what you were brought into the world to, and how you've been living as a practicing Jew in a family that's been practicing being Jews for literally centuries, literally forever. I want you to begin to share where you left off, and you left off with the cheerleaders. Remember?
You remember that one.
You remember that one. You're talking about the cheerleaders and making sure that you weren't looking at what you were not intended to look at.
So thank you. I actually want to put that into context, because something that, I think that most people find it like, how could that possibly be? But we actually grew up in a home with no television. And the reason why television was not welcome in our home was because of the influence that it could have on hijacking the narrative of our minds, of our young, impressionable minds. I will tell you, I recall when I was maybe 12 years old, I walked on Shabbos several miles to a friend's home, and we stayed by his home. We stayed overnight, Saturday night. And he had a television in his home. And I watched Gilligan's Island the entire evening until like 8 o'clock in the morning. And something about me felt like the Messiah had come. So understand that we didn't, for entertainment, we played games with each other. We did music, whatever it was. We had, we broke bikes and we put them back together. But growing up in a household with no television was very much because of the focus and attention of our parents in terms of what is it that we allow into our minds because of all of the influence that could be from out there. And I will tell you that later on, first of all, the next day, my father got wind of what happened. And to his credit, he didn't scream at me, nothing like that. He just said, from now on, if you ever want to hang out with that buddy, he's always welcome to come to our home. So coming from that and then going into environments where, here we are in a home where, thank God, Cunin and Har got 7 sisters. They always dressed in a way that their elbows were covered and that they never walked around in bathing suits or anything along those lines. My mother, of course, the same. And it was an environment that was so, I didn't realize it as a child because it just was ours. I mean, to some degree, of course, but I never knew what goes on in people's homes. So I didn't, I did know that we were different in the sense of how we dress. Even like, you wouldn't find one of us walking around, around anywhere just with a bathing suit. You see that all the time around here in California, but that wasn't even something that we thought about. So going from there into environments where there's a complete different standard of code of being was a very, very interesting contrast. I mean, I grew up in Westwood Village. I don't know if you remember, if you recall, or if you're familiar with what in the 70s and the 80s, Westwood Village was a happening place. Every Saturday night, people would come there. Most people would be completely out of their minds. They were either stoned or drunk or both. And then you had the Harry Cristo, whatever you call them, and they would come and dance there in the middle of the scene. And that was my life. It was such an interesting. I mean, I feel so blessed to be part of the Rebbe's army, is because that even though we did live a lifestyle that was very, very much focused and filled with intention of everything that went on in our home, and at the same time, we were brought to a community where there were very, very few people like us.
Levi, it's really, really important, I believe, because you've mentioned several things in your monologue that you take for granted, meaning you're so accustomed to saying them. But I'm imagining those individuals who are not accustomed to hearing them and have no understanding of the meaning behind them. We just sort of drop them in the conversation and go on as though people understand what we're talking about. I'm sitting here and I know that most of the people who are listening to us, and I'm not talking about the practicing Jews, although many of the practicing Jews don't know what you're talking about because they're not practicing Jews as you're a practicing Jew. You follow me? But you used the name, the Rebbe. And so I think it's very, very, very critical at this point where you please share who the Rebbe is, who the Rebbe was, and what the Rebbe signifies in the Chabad category, I'll call it, of Judaism. Because as well, the Chabad category of Judaism is different than the conservative distinction in Judaism. You follow?
Yes.
Follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Could you please share with our guests who the Rebbe is, who the Rebbe was, and I say was because he's passed, but is ever present in the mind of every Hasidic Jew everywhere in the world. Please share that so that our guests know what you're speaking about.
Well, the good news is you make it very easy for me because I'm looking at the Rebbe as I speak, the picture of the Rebbe behind you.
Yes.
So at least we know who we're talking about.
Yes. Say that again. The picture of the Rebbe behind me.
That's correct. But I see the Rebbe right with you. I kind of find that so beautifully ironic that the wandering Jew is the one with the picture of the Rebbe behind him. Actually, I got one to hear too.
Go on.
kind of speaks for everything about the Rebbe. But the point, the Rebbe is was the leader of the Chabad movement from the year 1950 when his father-in-law passed away. He was a seventh in line of a series of leaders who, the truth is, it was much more than seven, because from the time of Moses, the structure of Judaism is as such that there are always those who are given the inspiration and the connection and the divine gift to be those who are the embodiment of that spark of Moses in every generation. And
please, when you say that, I'm going to do this persistently, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because I'm going to assume that while everybody listening to us knows the name Moses, they really don't know Moses as a Hasidic Jew knows Moses, as most Jews know Moses. But the way a Hasidic Jew knows Moses and the way a wandering Jew knows Moses are miles apart. Even more than miles. They're thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years apart. They're completely categorically light years apart. And because I've been speaking with you for over 5 years now, I've come to see the gap between what I perceive to be true about the one you speak about as Moses, and the one I identify with as the one who's Moses, just in the same way as you use the name the Rebbe. And I don't want to use up the time. We only have 20 minutes, and I already set the stage saying, talk about your life. But in fact, if we don't really address that name, Moses, that man, Moses, that soul, Moses, and that man, the Rebbe, Menachem Schneerson, we're just leaving everything out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So obviously Moses, just Moses alone is a long conversation of the nature of who Moses was. But understand that when the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt 3,300 plus years ago, and when we read about in the Torah about the exodus of the Jewish people, the way in which the story occurs is that there is one person who is chosen to be the leader of the Jewish people. And that person is Moses, Moshe. And Moses was a shepherd. And the oral teachings of the Torah tell us that the reason why he was chosen was because of the tremendous affection that he had toward his flock. And because of his tremendous affection towards his flock, Hashem said, I want him to be the one to lead my flock. And Moses, therefore, endured a painful leadership of the Jewish people. Because indeed, the Jewish people are the most difficult to lead. As the old saying goes, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So Moses' leadership was challenged even after he had proven himself to be the prophet that he was, in a way that no one doubted it at all. But yet, nevertheless, that's the role of Moses, was to lead the Jewish people and to lead them through the desert for 40 years. And he led them in a way where he sustained them with faith. He sustained them with the information and the connection that he had to let everyone know that God is real and our intimate personal relationship with God is real, and that God is everywhere, and that God cares for us. And even in times where it seems that God isn't present, it's not the case. But in order for us people to have been inspired to have that connection, we needed, Hashem had chosen that the system should be that there should be individuals, beginning from Moses, throughout every generation, that would serve as that mouthpiece of comfort and that mouthpiece of faith and trust, and administer it to the flock so that they too can ascend to a higher level of their own selves, and so that they too can be inspired within their own selves to have and open up a personal relationship with Hashem. So what Moses did in his generation, the Rebbe has done and continues to through his emissaries like myself, to reach out to both Jews and non-Jews, and to shepherd the faith that he was blessed to have in such a powerful, strong way, so that we could also, each and every one of us, open up to a level within ourselves that some of us may not even think we're capable of. So that's what a Rebbe is. A Rebbe is a leader. A Rebbe is a shepherd. And a Rebbe is one that helps us elevate within our own lives, administering that inspiration to each person at their level, to each person to the degree that they're capable of, and inspiring us to never get comfortable within our service and within our relationship with God. Does that answer it?
I love that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I say thank you very much on behalf of our guests, because while at this point in time, since we've just begun, our guests, many of them are Jews who you have shared the good news that we're meeting a wandering Jew and a practicing Jew, and those I've attracted to this meeting and this radical conversation. But understand how profound it is that you just shared the beginning and the present, albeit there's so much in between the beginning and the present that is so critical to people, most specifically at this time. At this time, where we're suddenly brought to our homes and restricted from going out into the world because of this massively invasive virus that's attacked all of us, everywhere, universally. In short, it's brought, and I'm laughing when I say it, but I'm laughing only because otherwise I'd be crying. It's brought our attention, this universal attention, to the one reality. And whenever in our lives has that happened, Levi? In your life, hear me, in your life, it's my understanding it's been happening since the very beginning. In my life, not so much. But in your life, it has been. Is that a fair statement to make?
I would say that. I mean, I would say that, yes. I think it's because, that's where my parents and my educators, that's where the focus has always been. Has always been in that direction. Obviously, the circumstances of today open up everything about that in a much deeper level, as it does for everybody, but naturally. But yes, that's been the conversation from the time that we're little children.
Well, Levi, I hate to say this, you realize it's 3:19, meaning our 20 minutes is actually almost up. We have 1 minute left to do what we started out to do, and we haven't even gotten close to doing it. Not even close. But I want to say something now that I believe you've just raised, and that has just touched me very, very deeply. And that is the infinite, literally infinite reality that each of us share, but that we each share it differently. Because in one way, we've been so terribly disconnected. And so it's interesting that being disconnected in this time of disconnection, the connection I'm speaking about has such a rich and significant importance to each of us and to everyone we're speaking to right now. I just want to say thank you for that, Levi, because you brought the Rebbe into the conversation, you brought Hashem into the conversation, you brought Moses into the conversation, and that's not the kind of conversation a wandering Jew ever has. A wandering Jew is a conversation about football, about baseball, about Turkey, about Ford motor cars, about all the different things we talk about on the street. And I'm not diminishing the reality of that by saying that. I'm simply saying it's just true. And if that's
true, I do have to say I was a big Kobe Bryant fan, and I was devastated when he had the accident with his child. So I mean, you know, we did get to have, you know, to have that aspect in our lives. It just wasn't the focus of it. You know,
no, I got that. I really got that. Thank you for saying that. I'm not attempting to put you on a pedestal.
I understand.
Hear me. That's not my interest at all, to put either of us on a pedestal. My interest is to put us in the world truly. And the only way we can do that is by sharing ourselves here with everybody out there in the world. And so we've taken that responsibility on. Think about that. We've taken that responsibility on. So Levi, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Shabbat begins soon. And we will see everybody then on Sunday. But of course, you on Sunday will be watching what we've just done on Friday, because you're not experiencing this live. But of course you're live, and of course we're live. And I want to say goodbye to everyone. Levi?
Thank you, Rebbe Michal, and thank you those who are watching. If you have questions, and you want to know some other details about the observant Jewish life, you're more than welcome to email me at rabbi@jewishmalibu.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions here that you raise in the email.
Wonderful. And every single one of you, please, you can connect with me. I'm easy to find, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.